We live in an era often described as an epidemic of loneliness. Walk down any busy street or scroll through social media, and you might never guess that so many people feel utterly alone. Yet studies confirm a sharp rise in loneliness across society. People today spend far less time socializing than they did just 2 decades ago, nearly 70% less. The average American went from hanging out in person with friends for around 150 minutes per day in 2003 to only 40 minutes per day in 2020. And we have fewer close pals to rely on. Almost half of Americans, or 49% in 2021, said that they have 3 or fewer close friends, a stark jump from just 27% in 1990. Clearly, something has shifted in how we connect with each other, leaving more people feeling isolated than ever before. Perhaps the most striking part of this trend is who is feeling the loneliest. It turns out that young men are reporting loneliness at unprecedented levels. A recent Gallup analysis found that about 1 in 4 US men under 35 said that they felt lonely a lot of the day. 1 in 4. That's significantly higher than the national average, which is around 18%, and even higher than young women, only 18% of whom reported the same level of loneliness. In fact, young American men appear to be outliers globally. Loneliness rates for young men in other wealthy countries tend to hover around 15%, making the 25% figure in the US a real red flag. As one writer put it, it's certainly a wake-up call. This issue seems to be weighing heavily on the American young male population. Loneliness isn't just an emotional state either, it's a serious public health concern. US Surgeon General Vivek Murthy even issued a 2023 advisory calling loneliness a profound public health threat, noting that lacking social connection can increase the risk of premature death as much as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Chronic loneliness has been linked to higher risks of heart disease, stroke, dementia, depression, and anxiety. It's miserable on a personal level, and as one Harvard researcher said, a sign of societal failure. Like we're not taking care of each other. In other words, the widespread loneliness suggests that there is something fundamentally broken in our social world. So how did we get here? Why are there so many people, especially young men, feeling so alone even in a time of constant connectivity? To understand why everyone is lonely now, we first need to grasp how rapidly social connection has declined in recent years. Some of the decline has been happening for decades, but it's rapidly accelerated in the 21st century. Surveys show that people today have fewer friends and spend less time with those friends than past generations did. We already noted the huge drop in time spent with friends daily. Similarly, close friendships have dwindled. One national survey found that 49% of Americans have 3 or fewer closer friends as of 2021. Compare that to only 27% in 1990. In plain terms, nearly half of us have nobody beyond 1 or 2 people to confide in. And 15% of men in America said in 2021 that they have no close friends at all, a 5-fold increase from just 3% of men who said that in 1990. Imagine that, about 1 in 7 men walking around has not a single person that they feel close to. That's a lot of people essentially navigating life solo. It's not just men either. Women and people of all ages are experiencing loneliness, though there are nuances. Roughly 1 in 6 Americans, or 16%, overall report that they feel lonely or isolated most or all of the time. And younger adults are far more likely to feel frequent loneliness. About 22% of those under 50 say that they often feel lonely, compared to only 9% of folks over 50. So loneliness is hitting the young particularly hard. This is quite odd historically as well. Younger adults used to be the most socially fulfilled age group, with happiness sort of following a U-shaped curve, higher in youth, dipping in midlife, and rising in old age. But recently, that curve is flattened or even inverted, with young adults now reporting lower well-being and more loneliness than older groups. It's like the script flipped. Being young today isn't the carefree, socially rich experience that it once was for many. And what about the gender differences? For years, researchers thought men and women experience loneliness at similar rates, and some still debate it. But new data like the Gallup poll suggests that young men in particular are struggling disproportionately. Consider not only friendships, but romantic partnerships. According to Pew Research, a stunning 63% of men under 30 are single, compared to only 34% of women under 30. That suggests that many young men have neither a partner nor close friends to turn to. I'm not saying that young women have it easy though. Their loneliness rates are also high, and many pressures affect all youth, but there's a unique crisis among men that's emerging in the data. Before we dive into causes, let's pause on why this matters so much. Humans are a deeply social species. Our brain and well-being evolved to thrive on community and connection. When we lack those, it's straight up painful. Loneliness is literally a stress signal that's similar to hunger, telling us something essential is missing. Prolonged isolation puts the body in a stress state. Over time, that wrecks your health, comparable to well-known risks like smoking and obesity. Mentally, loneliness can make you anxious, depressed, or cynical about socializing at all. In short, this isn't just about feeling a bit down. It's a societal problem that's robbing people of happiness and years of life. Now let's critically examine why loneliness has become so common today. What changed in our environment to cause such a disconnect? One major piece of the puzzle is the digital revolution. Smartphones, social media, and the internet that pervade our lives. On the surface, we've never been more connected. You can message or video call anyone, anytime. Millions of friends and followers, and endless content at our fingertips. But as most of us have felt firsthand, digital connection isn't the same as face-to-face connection. In fact, it can actively fuel loneliness. A new long-term study from Baylor University highlights this sobering paradox. The more people spend on social media, the lonelier they tend to feel. This study followed 7,000 adults for 9 years and found that even active engagement online, like posting, commenting, and interacting, was associated with increased feelings of loneliness over time. Think about your own experience. You scroll through Instagram or Twitter and see everyone else seemingly living their best lives. Maybe you even chat with people or get some likes on your post. But does it leave you feeling truly connected and supported? Often it's the opposite. Research suggests that passively consuming others' content can heighten loneliness, probably by fostering envy and feeling that you're on the outside looking in. Even actively posting and messaging doesn't necessarily help. It might provide a brief distraction or a hit of validation, but it's definitely no substitute for actually being with people. One reason is that digital interactions lack the richness of in-person interaction. The eye contact, voice tone, touch, and body language that our brains crave. A text or comment doesn't release the same bonding hormones or convey the same warmth as a shared laugh in person. Social media and online life can become a vicious cycle. Psychologists note that when people feel lonely, they often turn to social media for comfort or a sense of connection, which can backfire and make them feel even lonelier. It's like being thirsty and drinking salt water. It just increases the thirst. The Baylor study found a feedback loop at play. Lonely individuals use social media more, but heavy use led to greater loneliness over time. Part of the problem is illusion versus reality. Online, it seems like you're surrounded by friends. You might even have hundreds of followers or gaming buddies. But when it comes to meaningful support, someone to call in a crisis or hang out with on Saturday, many find that they have nobody. It's easy to confuse social media activity with genuine social bonds. On top of that, the design of digital platforms can discourage real connection. Apps are engineered to capture our attention and maximize engagement, often by exploiting basic behavioral mechanisms. For instance, social media apps use variable rewards. Sometimes you get a flurry of likes or messages, other times nothing. Sometimes when you're scrolling, you see stuff you like, sometimes you see stuff you hate, which strongly conditions us to keep checking our phones. Slot machines work in a similar manner. The unpredictability of reward is powerfully habit-forming. We get quick dopamine hits with notifications, which reinforces the habit of scrolling and posting, even if deep down it's not fulfilling. In plain terms, our phones have trained us to seek social snacks over long-term nourishment. It feels easier and instantly rewarding to tap out a tweet or play another round of Fortnite online with strangers than to say, go meet a friend for coffee, which takes more effort and planning. Over time, those quick digital fixes can crowd out the slower, sometimes more effortful activities of real-world friendship. None of this is to say that technology is pure evil either. The internet can be a lifeline for connecting people across distances or finding communities of niche interest. And during a crisis like the pandemic, it was a godsend to have Zoom and social networks. But the balance is tipped. On average, Americans now spend about 6 hours per day using digital media, and over a third of adults are online almost constantly. That's a huge chunk of time that used to be spent in physical company, or doing hobbies. When streaming a show or scrolling TikTok replaces hanging out, loneliness is gonna creep in. The key issue is that digital interaction, while easy and abundant, often lacks the emotional sustenance that real-world interaction provides. It's junk food for our social life, convenient and tasty, but ultimately leaving us undernourished. As one researcher put it, extensive use, whether passive or active, does not alleviate loneliness and may in fact intensify it. So the rise of smartphones and social media in the past 15 years is a big reason everyone seems lonelier now. We're all connected, yet we feel disconnected. Technology is only part of the story too. Broader societal changes have also eroded the fabric of our social lives. Over the past few decades, the way we traditionally formed community and friendships have fundamentally shifted, and in many cases, broken down entirely. Consider how our lifestyles and institutions have changed. More people live by themselves now than ever before. In the US, the share of adults living alone has nearly doubled in 50 years. In 1960, only 13% of households were single person. By 2022, that was about 29%. Young adults move out and live solo, or just with a roommate, rather than in multi-generational households. And people are marrying later or not at all, leading to more years spent single. When you live alone, social interaction doesn't just happen as naturally as it would in a bustling family home. You have to seek it out, and many don't or can't. Participation in community groups has plummeted. Things like religious congregations, clubs, neighborhood associations, or bowling leagues. For example, church membership in the US fell from 70% in 1999 to 47% in 2020, dropping below half the population for the first time ever. Similar declines are seen in other civic organizations. These used to be reliable places to meet people, forge friendships, and feel a sense of belonging. As one expert described it, institutions that were pillars of community have steadily crumbled or become less central in people's lives. The result? Fewer built-in avenues for regular social interaction. I'm not a religious guy either, but people need community, and whether they find that in a church or a pickleball group or whatever the fuck is all the same to me. Modern life under capitalism often demands us to prioritize work and individual success over community. People move cities for jobs, leaving behind hometown friends. In early adulthood, friends from school tend to scatter. High-pressure careers and gig economy hustles eat up time that could be spent nurturing relationships. By midlife, many find themselves socially poor because work and family obligations left little room for friendship. As Jeffrey Hall, a friendship researcher, notes, it can feel too hard to invest time in new and deeper friendships when careers and moves keep disrupting your social circles. Young adults feel this too. You graduate and suddenly the convenient social environment of school is gone, replaced by a city where you know no one. If you work remotely, as more people do now, you miss out on workplace camaraderie as well. Even the way our cities and neighborhoods are built can isolate us. I recommend the 1999 film The Cruise to learn more about this topic. Cities organized in blocks that literally box people in. Car-centric organization, people commuting alone from garage to office back to garage, and streets devoid of sidewalks or public gathering spots. These physical factors reduce chance encounters and causal conversations that can spark friendships. Compare that to a tight-knit town or a walkable community where you bump into people daily. Over time, sprawling development has often meant less daily human contact outside of planned meetups, and those planned meetups often involve buying things for them to even occur. The need to leave the house is also significantly diminished in the age of Amazon, DoorDash, and streaming. As the Stanford psychologist Jamil Zaki observed, communal activities don't have to be done in community, so we stay home. You can get food, entertainment, workouts, or even prayer via apps. Why go to a group class or the movies when you can watch Netflix at home or group chat on Discord? Zaki calls it social inertia. The longer we isolate, the more effort it takes to push ourselves out to socialize. Going out has to become like working out. We feel better after doing it, but it takes energy to get started, he said pointedly. In a very real sense, our environment now encourages us to stay isolated. It's comfortable, convenient, and less energy to remain in our personal bubble with digital content to keep us company. Unfortunately, that convenience comes at the cost of loneliness. These systemic shifts form a perfect storm for disconnection. By the time someone realizes they're lonely, it's often because multiple support structures quietly fell away. Take the example of a typical young man today. He grows up with online entertainment and fewer in-person hobbies. He's likely not involved in community groups as previous generations were. After high school or college, friends disperse. If he doesn't actively work to make new friends, his circle's gonna shrink. He may live alone or spend a lot of time isolated in his room, gaming or browsing the internet to fill the hole of companionship. He's likely single and is stuck in a vicious cycle of endlessly swiping on dating apps. He might move for a job and lose what local connections he had. Work is now remote, so he rarely meets colleagues informally. Day by day, he has fewer social interactions, mostly digital interactions, and a growing sense of being cut off from others' lives. This scenario is playing out for countless people. Another subtle factor is the cultural individualism, and even cynicism in modern society. We're often taught to be self-sufficient, not to bother others with our problems, or that everyone is busy with their own life. Young adults today sometimes underestimate how much others might welcome connection. In Zaki's research, people consistently guessed that strangers or acquaintances wouldn't be interested in chatting. Yet, when they actually took the chance, others were friendlier and more open than expected. Our polarized, anxiety-fueled media environment doesn't help. It can make us see others as threats or simply make us too stressed to socialize. All this leads to many people hesitating to initiate social contact, each thinking the other isn't interested, so everyone stays lonely by default. It's a quiet mutual misunderstanding on a societal scale. Beyond technology, the broader systems that used to pull people together have weakened. Family units are smaller and more spread out. Communities are less cohesive. Life is fast-paced, economically tough for many, and geographically mobile. The default state has become alone together. Lots of people physically alone, coexisting with others only through the glow of screens. Why focus on young men though? As we've discussed, they appear to be experiencing loneliness at higher rates than other groups right now. There are a few reasons specific to young men's socialization and circumstances that make this problem especially acute for them. Culturally, men's friendships often center around activities or shared interests, gaming, sports, etc., rather than emotional vulnerability. Many young men have friends to do things with, but not to open up to. When they were younger, this might have been fine. Friends came easily through school or play. But as adult life hits, friendships require more effort and deeper trust to sustain. Men who haven't been encouraged to share feelings might not cultivate those deeper bonds. Women on average tend to maintain and seek emotional support from a wider network, whereas men are less likely to ask for help or a sympathetic ear. So a young man might have drinking buddies or online pals, yet still feel that no one really knows or cares about him. This lack of perceived support is a fast track to loneliness. Many men have internalized the message that needing connection or feeling lonely equals weakness, a consequence of toxic masculinity. Men have it drilled into us from an early age that vulnerability and emotional connection are signs of weakness, writes Professor Scott Galloway. If you believe that, you'll shy away from saying, "I miss you, man," to a friend or from hugging it out when you're down. You might not call a friend when you're struggling because you don't want to seem needy. This stoicism means opportunities for intimacy are lost. It's telling that even when lonely, men often suffer in silence rather than reach out, a dangerous pattern that only deepens isolation. Thankfully, voices like Galloway's are pushing back, saying this view of masculinity is not just outdated, but harmful. Emotional connection is a human need, not a weakness. As touched on earlier, after school, many men rely on romantic partners for social life or drift into isolation. Some research finds that straight men frequently depend on female partners to organize social activities and maintain connections. If a young man doesn't have a partner, or if that relationship ends, he might find himself with no one planning hangouts or checking in on him. It should definitely be on him to develop those skills, but we unfortunately live in a society where that has not been the norm. Additionally, milestones like becoming a father can isolate men if they pour all their time into work and family, neglecting friends. The modern dating landscape can amplify loneliness for young men as well. Dating apps offer the premise of unlimited options, yet many young men find themselves getting little attention on these platforms. The statistics show a skewed picture. A smaller percentage of men receive the majority of likes and matches, while many get few or none. I really don't want to toot my own horn here, but as a guy that gets matches, even that doesn't offer much more than a temporary confidence boost. When 63% of young men are single, it implies a lot of guys are not finding partners, even as they watch peers in relationships. This can be demoralizing. Feeling unloved or romantically invisible can reinforce a negative self-image and contribute to people retreating from social life. Of course, women face these challenges as well, especially women of color or people with disabilities. But the discrepancies suggest many young men are left standing on the sidelines. Some react with resentment or retreat into online echo chambers. We've all heard of the toxic incel communities like Kiwi farmers or people on 4chan, which only further alienates them. Most, however, just quietly ache for connection and don't know how to improve their situation. Culturally, there's been talk of a friendship recession among men. In earlier generations, men might have had bowling nights or veterans lodges or a regular poker game. Those spaces are rare now. Young men today might interact through video games or internet forums, but those often lack the real-life camaraderie that, say, a sports league or a hobby group might provide. When men do form all-male groups, like a local basketball league or even a group chat, society sometimes downplays their importance or assumes guys are fine on their own. But evidence suggests that male-only social groups can be beneficial for men's well-being, just as women-only groups can uplift women. Yet fewer men participate in them today. Men in their 20s and 30s often report it's really hard to make new friends. It's not that they don't want them, it's just that they're not sure how to make friends outside of work or school contexts. So the default is isolation, even if they desire friendship. In short, young men face a confluence of social hurdles, a dating world where many feel left out, a culture that discouraged them from emotional bonding, and the disappearance of easy friendship opportunities. It's no wonder that by the numbers, young men in places like the United States are coming up lonelier than ever. This is a dark and critical situation, an entire cohort that feels disconnected and unsure how to fix it. But it's not hopeless. Recognizing these challenges is the first step towards addressing them. If you're a young man, or anyone for that matter, who finds this all hitting close to home, know that you're not truly alone in feeling this way. In fact, a huge number of your peers are in the same boat, quietly longing for more connection. That means that the potential is there. If so many people want friends, we just need to break the cycle and help them find each other. Loneliness can be both a result and a cause of behavioral patterns, creating a self-perpetuating loop. Here's how it often works. When we feel lonely, we might become withdrawn, anxious, or pessimistic about socializing. We might assume no one wants to hang out with me or just fear rejection. As a result, we don't reach out or we turn down invitations. We isolate ourselves further, which then makes us even lonelier. Psychologists have observed that loneliness can actually change our perceptions. Lonely individuals tend to underestimate how friendly others are going to be, and they might come off as less approachable themselves, due to guarded or downcast behavior. This can lead to a sad irony where each side waits for the other to initiate. Social skills can get rusty with disuse too. If you haven't hung out with friends in a long time, you might feel awkward when you finally do again. That awkwardness can discourage you from trying again. It's a form of punishment that your mind wants to avoid. In behavioral terms, if an attempt to socialize ends up feeling uncomfortable or doesn't yield the connection you hoped for, your brain registers it as a bad outcome. Next time, you remember that sting and perhaps avoid the situation. This is akin to negative reinforcement, where you stick to solitude to avoid the pain of potential rejection. On the flip side, staying home playing video games or watching YouTube gives immediate comfort. It's safe, no social risk, and it's entertaining. Keep watching my videos. That comfort is rewarding in the short term, so the more you choose it, the more it reinforces the habit of not engaging socially. That's right, keep watching my videos. Never make any friends, never learn any new hobbies. Just kidding, I don't need the money. I'm employed. Breaking out of this cycle can indeed feel like working out, as Zaki said. Hard to start, but rewarding once you do. The key is gradually retraining yourself to seek and enjoy connection again. In a way, we have to undo the conditioning that modern life has imposed on us. If loneliness has become a habit, we can replace it with a new habit of socializing. It starts with small steps. For someone very withdrawn, the first step might be as simple as saying hello to a cashier or sending a short text to an old friend just to check in. These small actions are usually low risk and can yield a tiny dose of positive social feedback. A smile or a short friendly reply. That's positive reinforcement for the effort that you took. It tells your brain, hey, that wasn't so bad. Maybe even felt a little good. From there, you just build up. You accept the casual invite even if you're tempted to cancel, or ask an acquaintance to grab coffee. You might join a group activity centered on something you enjoy, a class, a club, or a sports team. The first time it's going to feel uncomfortable, expect that. But each time you follow through and even have a mildly pleasant interaction, you're reinforcing the social muscle. Over time, things that felt daunting, like making a phone call or inviting someone over, become more natural. You start experiencing the rewards of friendship again. Laughter, support, and a sense of belonging, which then makes you want it more. That's the cycle we want to kickstart, the opposite of the loneliness loop. It's also important to recognize and correct distorted thoughts loneliness breeds. Remind yourself that most people actually do welcome connection. Studies show others generally react more positively towards outreach than we'd predict. That friend you haven't seen in months might be thrilled that you reached out because they've been lonely too. If you fear rejection, consider that many around you are equally hungry for camaraderie. They just might be too shy to say it. So by taking the initiative, you're not imposing. You could be brightening their day as well as your own. The fact that we're even having this conversation, that loneliness is being openly discussed, is a positive sign. It means people are recognizing the problem and looking for solutions. Leaders and communities are starting to respond. The U.S. Surgeon General's advisory in 2023 laid out a framework to rebuild social connection, calling for everything from more community programs to workplace changes that facilitate friendship. There's a growing movement to treat loneliness not as an embarrassing personal failing, but as a public health issue and social challenge that we must address together. On an individual level, there are concrete steps to combat loneliness. Be intentional about socializing. Schedule regular meetups. Make it a point to get together with friends or family as much as possible. Put it on the calendar like a workout. Don't wait for when I feel like it, because when you're lonely, motivation is low, and you're never going to feel like it. Make it a routine, and the enjoyment will follow. Join something. A class, a club, a volunteer group, a sports league, a faith community, I don't care. Anything that brings people together routinely. That activity is the excuse. The real benefit is seeing the same people regularly and naturally building friendships. Remember that it can take over 200 hours to turn an acquaintance into a close friend, according to one study. So give it time and show up consistently. Practice small kindnesses. Say thank you, compliment others, and lend a hand. Kindness tends to be reciprocated and opens people up. Also, helping others, volunteering for example, is a powerful antidote to feeling alone because it reminds you that you have something to offer and are valued. Use technology wisely too. If you spend a lot of time online, try steering that towards more meaningful interactions. Don't just consume content blindly. For instance, instead of just liking a friend's post, maybe send them a message and ask how they've been. Use video chat to speak to family far away. Open up to people you trust. Dare to express vulnerability with a friend or relative that you feel safe with. It might be as simple as saying, "Hey, I've been feeling a bit isolated lately. Could we chat or hang out more?" You'll often find that they respond with empathy, maybe even relief that you broke the ice on that topic. Emotional honesty can deepen bonds quickly. It signals that you value the relationship enough to be real about your feelings. For young men in particular, it might be uncomfortable at first, but try to challenge that stoic norm. Next time you're with a friend and something's on your mind, take a small risk and share it. Or if you appreciate a friend, tell them. Odds are that it'll strengthen the friendship. As Galloway urges, we need to cleanse the idea that emotional connection is weakness from our culture. In truth, seeking and fostering connection is one of the most human things you can do. It's also worth noting that you are not the only lonely person out there. Far from it. There's comfort in realizing that a lot of people around you, classmates, coworkers, the guy at the gym, or the neighbor down the hall, are also yearning for more connection. Loneliness often hides in plain sight. When you reach out to others, you might be doing a favor for both of you. As one expert who studied happiness for decades concluded, relationships are the most important factor for well-being and longevity. People with warm relationships live longer, happier lives, and those who isolate tend to suffer. We have the power to rebuild those relationships step by step. The modern world may be uniquely challenging when it comes to feeling connected. We've identified plenty of reasons why everyone seems lonelier now, especially young men. Our digital habits, our social structures, and our cultural norms all have cracks. But the hope comes in knowing that humans haven't fundamentally changed. We still crave and thrive on connection just as we always have. It might be harder to get nowadays, but nowhere near impossible. By understanding behavioral patterns, like how we gravitate easily towards empty interactions, and the systemic issues, like how our society has been organized to isolate us, we can start to push back. We can make better choices in our personal lives, and as a society, we can prioritize community and friendship. It might be as simple as inviting a friend over for a drink instead of playing video games alone, or as complex as cities taking decades to design more public spaces for people to mingle. But every little bit of genuine connection helps chip away at the loneliness epidemic. So if you're feeling lonely, remember, you're not alone, and it's not always going to be this way. With a bit of courage, take that first step. Send that text, join that group, say hi to that acquaintance. You may find many others ready to connect. Loneliness has brought so many people down, but it can also be the force that brings people together, once we all acknowledge it and decide we deserve better. There is a path out, and it starts with each of us extending a hand.